You would have heard about the company McKinsey, right? Some of you even aspire to apply there and work there. Well, one of the things that they are famous for is presentations, the ability to show data or tell a story through charts. And in this video, I'm going to teach you that one chart which I've consistently found in most of the reports online. I call it parallel chart. So if you want to practice and see how it is recreated in Excel or PowerPoint, do download the practice file from the description. So in this video, I will teach you how to build parallel charts and what are they used for. I'll take several examples from multiple reports of McKinsey, and through those examples, you'll not only understand why they need to be used, but also how to build them. So before you get started, make sure that you download the practice file from the description given below. And let's start with the first chart. The first chart says that look, in some sectors, more than a quarter of small businesses may close permanently. Now that's the claim that you're trying to make. In majority of the McKinsey reports, they will first put a statement which seems like a claim. Now to back that claim, to make it sound more convincing, they have the data. And the data is represented in a chart format. So here, the concept of parallel chart is you'll have two charts in parallel to each other and they will share the common category labels. So that when you read the data, you can read one full line as a whole. So let's understand from this, how is this chart built? First, the context. The context is that there are a lot of sectors which got badly hit after the pandemic. And they have been sorted in a sort of descending order. The ones which are the most badly hit are on the top. So as you can see, the sectors with the large negative effect, the maximum large negative effect is here at the top. Now that doesn't give you the complete picture, because when you just look at the first chart, you realize that maybe there are three sectors which are the ones having the largest negative effect. However, the claim that you're trying to make is that you are looking after small businesses. Now, take a look at the other part. Not all these three sectors have the same number of small businesses. So if you are into policy making or decision making, you will realize that the maximum subsidies or support that is needed by any sector amongst these three is the accommodation and food services, because that's where majority of the small businesses exist in terms of number. Now, when I looked at multiple parallel charts, which anyways I'm going to discuss in this video, I realized one thing. It had a pattern. The pattern was one of the charts would have an absolute number, let's say thousands, millions or billions. Next, the other chart will have a percentage number to indicate some KPI or some kind of a matrix. So that's the second part. And towards the end, generally, they will have either a total or some KPI number given in very large font to give people the big picture. So that's the format of parallel chart. Of course, we'll discuss more of these charts, but right now, let me get into a bit of practice mode so that you understand how to build this. I have already replicated this data so that we can practice. So I will optimize my screen. This is the data that I'm talking about: large effect, moderate negative effect, and low negative effect. So this first four columns refers to the first chart. The last column talks about number of businesses and that refers to the next chart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this entire data by placing my cursor in the first cell, simply holding my cursor down and dragging to the last cell, copy that. Possibly I'll add a new blank slide and then I'm going to make a chart here. To make matters simpler, I will first go to insert, go to chart. Let's say I want a bar chart which is 100% stacked, or I can even pick this one because anyways it's a survey data and the data is already converted into a percentage format. So I can pick up the stacked bar, click on OK. It will throw upon a sample chart along with the Excel window which should contain your data. So I'm going to pick up the first cell, Control V to paste it. Yes, that's my data. Now for the first chart, I just need the first four columns. I do not need the last column. So I do not wish to delete it because I might use this later. However, for now, I'll go scroll down and at the bottom where I see this corner point, I'll use the double-sided arrow to reduce the area. This ensures only the column B, C, and D's value are taken in the chart behind this Excel window. So I close this part. This is our starting point. Now, just to give you a parallel that, hey, what are we doing? I'm going to copy this sample picture of McKinsey report and just make a miniature format of this and keep it here for reference. Now, the first thing I look at is that, hey, accommodation and food services, this is something that I want on the top, along with all these axis labels. So I choose the category axis, right click, I go to format axis. Done. Once you do this, there is a setting hidden neatly towards the bottom right corner and it's called categories in reverse order. Just take a look. This is part of axis options, categories in reverse order. Boom, done. Now this part is done. Let me just make sure that I make those adequate formatting changes to make it look like that McKinsey chart. First, I delete these grid lines. All I have to do is select them and delete. If I want them, I can bring it back by going to chart design, add chart element and grid lines. And there you will see something called primary major vertical. So I'm not clicking it here right now, but if you want, you can bring it back. Next, I go to this axis and somehow I want this value to end at 100. So I right click, I go to format axis and I consider maximum bounds for axis to be 100. Now, if you wish that the jump value is not 10, it's 50. You can change that here and make the 10 as 50, 50, enter. It'll become 0, 50 and 100. So those two minor changes done. Next, whatever charts I have seen from McKinsey reports, I realized one thing, that the width of the horizontal bar is always greater than the width between any two bars. So that's not the case in my existing chart. It's quite the reverse. So I right click on the series, format data series, and I will reduce the gap width. Notice I'm getting closer. Super. Now, they also ensure that the color is used adequately to make sure the viewer looks at the most important part of the chart. So what I do next is I right click on the first part, which indicates large negative effect. I will change the color to, let's say, black. All right. The second one, which is the moderate negative effect, I'll go to fill color, but I might use eyedropper and use exactly the same color. And the last one as well, similarly fill and maybe a lighter shade of gray, or you may use eyedropper. So notice gradually we're getting closer to the McKinsey level chart. I'll ensure that I reduce the width to an extent that it doesn't hurt the category labels. And once I've done that, let me see what works best. Yes, this is good. So I've been able to populate the first set of chart. Next, I'll go to this axis label and ensure that in the format, I'll put an outline, a basic outline. This kinds of give you a basic outline just between the chart beginning and the end of this label axis. All right, next comes the tricky part. How do I create this parallel chart? Remember that when we were working with the data, copy pasting the data in Excel, we did not delete this extra column, right? So we will make a replica of this existing chart and make sure that we use column E for our next chart. So let's see how to do that. Now, remember that I'll be needing something which is absolutely parallel. So let me maybe make sure that I delete this chart title, and once done, I will use a shortcut key for my PowerPoint knowledge. That is, I select the boundary of the chart. I press Shift and Control from the keyboard and I keep it pressed. Now I'm using my cursor of the mouse to hold it down and make a replica. I've shared this technique multiple times in my other videos on the channel, but I'll again show that it's kind of tricky if you're doing for the first time. So let's say you have a square or a rectangle. I hold this down, Shift Control, and then drag it outside its current situation. And once done, I can even press Ctrl Y to repeat my last action. So this is kind of the trick that I'm going to use to make a replica. So Shift and Control, hold it down with the mouse and move it to the right. Superb. So this ensures that absolutely parallel to the left is my existing right chart. Do I need the data labels? Eventually, no. So I'll delete that later. But right now, my main focus is to get the chart correctly. So I right click, I go to edit data. This time I ensure that I will take up the data which is in the last column, which indicates number of businesses. So I will move this using the boundary. Notice using the boundary, I can move it. So I move it. I will reduce the area so that it only focuses on number of businesses. There's a small shaded blue color which tells me this is the column that has been chosen. However, there's a small problem. Since your maximum was 100, and in this current data, the number of businesses could exceed even, let's say, 700 or 800. So I need to ensure that I rectify this maximum size of this label. So I go to that label, right click. Once I do that, I will go to format axis, and let's see if I can make that maximum as 800. I know the maximum, that's why I'm writing 800. Or maybe the jump value could be maybe what? 200, maybe 400. You decide. You can of course change that. So jump value 0 to 400, 400 to 800. Done. Now I will delete this category labels. I will reduce the width of this chart. And notice, since it was absolutely in parallel to the first chart, so this is how I create this McKinsey parallel chart. You can add multiple layers in terms of storytelling techniques. You want to highlight something, that's fine, completely fine. Maybe you can choose this part, use any of the color palette from a certain company. But if you do that, just be careful that these settings might change and you may have to delete these legends. So in case you make additional changes which disturbs the entire area of this chart, you may have to adjust this manually. So I try to make whatever changes I have to in the initial stages, and then I create a replica so as to avoid this double work. So let me know in the comment section, did you like this parallel chart? Was that difficult? Was it easy? And of course, do not leave this video because there'll be more such examples coming in. These are very specific examples. There's a very good chance you will not find such examples on the YouTube. So if you want to learn this, practice this, you can pause the video, re-watch the video, and of course, do not forget to subscribe to this channel in case you want to come back and revise this video. We'll soon go to the next example where I will specifically show you how to create this thermometer-like look in this chart, in the horizontal bar chart. How was it? Did you like it? If you did, do leave a comment and let me know how you felt, and most importantly, keep watching the video. There's a lot to learn. I know it's a slight bit of discomfort, but trust me, it's totally worth it. So before we start making this chart, let's understand the context. Here the context talks about total jobs, which is marked by the dark blue color or navy blue, and the light blue indicates jobs at risk. So this chart effectively tells me which sectors where you would see the jobs are at highest risk. So I can clearly see accommodation and food services is one sector where the jobs are at highest risk. So let us see how to make this particular chart. Let me create a blank slide, and I already have the data in one of the slides of the presentation. Of course, you can download this from the description. There's a link there. You can capture that, put in the URL. In the meantime, let me go to the blank slide and see if I can make this chart. I go to insert, I go to a chart, and I'll pick a horizontal bar chart. To be precise, the first clustered bar chart. Okay. As usual, it gives me a blank data set. I'm going to replace that with my own data. Control V is what I do. I do not need the last column, so I reduce that selection. And this is kind of tricky for some. So just be aware that as you get closer, the border starts getting highlighted and the corner arrow changes. So I'll reduce that area. So this is my data set. Now, let me bring that chart onto the slide so that I can give you a comparative analysis of how to build that chart, okay? So I'm just going to focus on the first chart. The second is something that you've already covered in the last few minutes. Now, notice that the width of both these bars are different, and you can only do that if their axes are different. There's an option when you go to data series, it says gap width. Now this gap width is going to focus on one axis at a time. So if you change the gap width, it affects all the charts that are part of that particular axis, which is what I don't want. So of course, I'll be using the concept of primary and secondary axis soon. So you'll have to ask me, hey, which is the primary axis? Well, the bar which is sitting behind, in this case total jobs, the navy blue or the dark blue or charcoal grey, whatever you may see, is the layer which is lying behind. That's going to be primary axis. In our case, the total jobs is indicated by the grey color. So let me see if I can go to right click and click on change series chart type. The total job I want as primary axis. The jobs at risk, I want a secondary axis. Okay. Now, this is just the first step. Don't you worry about what are the other options that we need to change to make the chart look like that on the right. First thing that I notice is the axis maximum value is different for both. So I'm going to change that. Right click, format axis. The maximum has to be 6 matching with the other axis. Enter. Now it looks better. Next, the gray, that's the one which lies behind the total jobs primary axis, that I will right click upon, go to format axis and ensure I reduce the gap width by a big amount. On the contrary, I go to the yellow bar, which is jobs at risk, and I will increase the gap between the two yellow bars. Now this kinds of give you an indication that how the reaction is happening on the screen, right? So you can decide the width, but in short, these are the steps. Do I need both the axis values? No. So I may delete any one. Next, if you wish the color to be the same as the McKinsey chart, right click, go to fill. You can pick up the eyedropper, pick up this dark color. And for the one inside, again, do the same thing with the eyedropper and there you go. How about that? So you can make those minor changes, of course, to make it look more beautiful. But in short, you would have reached till this point where you can make this thermometer chart horizontally, and that kind tells you that, hey, which sector you're facing the highest jobs risk. By now, you would have realized what is the concept of parallel chart and how easy it can be to create them in Excel or PowerPoint. So I hope next time you get a chance to recreate this in your work. However, let's take one more example. It's good to see that you are coming along with me for the next example as well. This is the third example where I will be talking about that, hey, when I'm comparing multiple countries on a certain parameter on 2 different years, I would also like to see the difference between them and arrange accordingly. Now, if I put the same data in our normal chart, this is how it's going to look like. The one on the right. Absolutely makes no sense. So our objective will be, how do you make this chart in the McKinsey style where it is easy for the viewer to notice that which countries are on the top of the list and which countries are at the bottom on this particular parameter of difference between the spending on labor. So let me do one thing. Let me make this chart smaller for reference and use this data, which is the raw data, and see how can I reach from this chart to this level. Firstly, let me show you the data set. I right click, I go to edit data. I look at the Excel data. It's just talking about the amount, or let's say rather a percentage of GDP that is being spent on labor markets for these countries. A comparative number between 93 and 2015. Of course, I will need a column of difference and we will need to click on this button to be able to go to the Excel for editing that. So here I just create a column which says difference, and all I have to do is to make sure that I find out the difference. So for example, if somebody has reduced the spending, how would I know? By deducting 93 from 2015 value. Once that is done, I'll choose the entire data and go to the data tab to be able to sort this data. Sort by the difference, smallest to largest. Great. So I can see Denmark is one of those countries where the spending has drastically gone down between these 2 years. Now, once this data has been prepared, I will close this window and again come back and see what next to be done. First things first, I need 3 different charts, one for 93, one for 2015, and the third one for the difference. Fine. So I will go to edit data and ensure that my data should only use 93 for the current chart. So just like the previous section, I will use this corner point, reduce the area, and there you go. So I'll try my best to ensure that the first chart is formatted the best, because that's what I'm going to replicate in the next 2 things, right? So I'll delete this label. I can bring that back later. I will make sure the size is appropriate. I will delete this grid line just simply by selecting and pressing delete. and I'll ensure the width of these bars are more than what it is now. So right click and go to format data series. The gap between two bars, if you reduce that, it automatically increases the width of the bar. So this is mostly the first chart that I have created. Now I will change the color, fill color, maybe a light shade of gray. And if you wish to add a data label, you can go to chart design, add chart element and say data labels. So friends, I'm making these videos at a slightly faster pace so that you can get a sense of or the overview of what's happening. And if you wish to actually do it, then of course you have the liberty to pause the video, come back to this video channel and start watching the video again while you're practicing. So I click on outside in and I'm looking at a set of numbers, data labels, which has one decimal value. If you want to reduce that decimal value to nil, you can go to this number section and say, hey, I would want maybe a number with 0 decimal places, right? So this is pretty easy. If you want to do that, of course, I can also do Ctrl Z to bring back that one decimal value. Now, once this is done, next is the tricky part, which I taught you earlier. Use the boundary of the chart, press Shift and Control, hold it down with the mouse and drag it to the right. This creates a replica. Great. Now, in the second one, I am going to change the data from 1993 to 2015. So as again, I'm going to repeat the same steps, ensuring I pick up this border, the one in the blue, move that to 2015, and there you go. You have now 2015 data. But there's a major error here. The error is the axis 0 to 15, 0 to 8, both are not same. So Rishabh, how do I make that comparable? Of course, you'll make it 15. So I right click to the axis, format axis, go to the maximum. Hey, there you are. I'm going to make that 15, enter. Now this ensures that the width of both these are same so far, right? Now the challenge is you will need to delete this label sooner or later. And if you do that, notice the width automatically gets disturbed and it is not comparable anymore. So generally what I do is I try to move this chart in such a way so that it overlaps on the previous chart. Absolutely. And how do I ensure that? When I look at 0.0, notice at the labels 0.0 and the ending, both should be overlapping on each other. That's how I ensure that the width is common. I know this part is manual, but this at least ensures that the width is comparable. Right. So with 2-3 clicks, you should be able to get this in almost 99% accuracy. And once done, you can of course move this chart back to its original place. Now ensure this because these are common errors made by analysts that they do everything correctly, but 1 or 2 odd steps and their chart is not comparable. They are inaccurate. So here I'll of course change the color, maybe put something like a charcoal gray. Once this is done, then comes the next part. That is the third chart where I need to see the difference. So just like last time, Shift Control, and once having done that, move this to the right with the mouse and then right click, edit data. Within edit data, this time I'll focus on the difference column. Once done, superb. Now what I wish to ensure is automatically all the negative numbers should be red and all the positive numbers should be blue. How do you do that? Right click, go to format data series, pick up this fill bucket icon, and there is something called invert if negative. Superb. So I will ensure that the positive could be in green or maybe blue, whatever the color you decide, and the negative could be in red. How about that? So friends, we got very, very close. Of course, you can do some minor formatting here and there regarding placement or positioning, but in short, we have been able to achieve the concept of parallel chart. And to tell you the truth, this is pretty close to what we have been aiming to achieve. Whoa, that was a marathon video watching session. You completed this almost towards the end. And as a bonus, I'm going to share one more concept in the next 2 to 3 minutes. See if you like that as well. So before we conclude this video, let's quickly go through a small technique that I learned from McKinsey report, and that is for the fact, how do you make a message convincing? Now, they try to use multiple charts and they support their claim with 3-4 different metrics using different perspective. And let me give an example. Let's say one of their clients is in the insurance industry And what they wish to tell their client is that, look, the disruption is becoming more frequent and severe, right? And they should probably increase the risk premium or maybe the insurance premium. Now, how do we show that? First perspective is through a line chart that they see. World Uncertainty Index. It's showing towards on the upper side as the timeline goes ahead. Similarly, there is something called Geopolitical Risk Index, and that also I can see an uptick over the period of time. Companies subject to cyber breach per year, natural disasters per year. So the chart remains very simple. It's just a line chart for 4 different data points. However, when you put all of them together in a single slide, the claim that you're trying to make sounds so convincing. For example, disruption is becoming more frequent and more severe. So I like this particular style, and I saw the same style being used multiple times in their reports. For example, from 2015 Special Purpose Acquisition Companies, or SPAC in short, liquidation rates declined even as the average size of the fundraising grew. Now, for a lot of you, this might seem a little technical, but ignore the technicalities, but look at the way the point was being made using 3 different perspectives. Number of SPACs by status. So I can see announced, completed, searching, liquidated. Then the share of SPAC by status. The liquidation rate can be seen as gradually declining, even as the average SPAC size is growing. So as you notice, by putting these 3 different data points parallel to each other using 3 different forms of chart, you are making your message more convincing. I've given more such examples in my presentation, which you can download from the link in the description below. This is another one that I liked. In the 22 OECD countries we studies, outcomes for workers have changed in several ways. How? Unprecedented job growth. Okay. However, that was driven by part-time work. As you can see, this is the part which is talking about the part-time work. So it was majorly driven by part-time work. And you would see in today's time, gig work and freelance work, that's what's happening in a polarized labor market. So not all income groups are benefiting or getting the same impact. High income, yes. Low income, yes. But middle income, low. So you are trying to use 3 different data points to make a certain claim and make it sound even more convincing. So there are many such examples which I have seen in the McKinsey charts. Of course, you may not have the time to go through the reports, but it's my job to show you all of this compiled into a single video. Let me know how did you like this compilation, and I'll keep on releasing more such videos. Let me know in the comment section how you felt about this entire learning experience. I'm Rishabh, and I'll see you in the next video.